Rob, can you tell us a little bit about, so many of us are teaching remotely and looking, even if we're in a hybrid space, we're looking at screens full of students' faces, but sometimes we're looking at screens that are just little black boxes with students' names on them. Are there different considerations for faculty if we're trying to make sense of camera on or camera off policies in our remote teaching?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question, and I'm so glad you asked it. I've had a lot of faculty ask me about this. Of course, this is probably one of the components of teaching remotely that maybe we didn't consider until we were in the moment, right? And so I have had a few students come to me and talk about being outed by their professor's camera on policy because either they weren't aware of it or they didn't realize it or they just didn't think about what was behind them. And again, early on when we all started doing this, none of us really thought about what was behind us. We weren't in that practice of like constructing a background. Like I have my lovely plants here. I had to think about this, right? And this is only something that's come from many months of doing things online and remotely. And our students may not have been in that space yet. And so for a lot of LGBTQ plus students, their rooms are really the only place where they can fully express all of their identities. Now, whether that's because they are in the closet at home, they can't be fully and authentically who they are at home, or because they're not ready to be fully out on campus. So they might have a wall that has nothing but like pride flags and their identity flags, right? They could have posters that celebrate trans identities or something, and that could be an outing piece of material that they may not have thought about because it's something they see every day, so they don't they don't always think about it. And so I have had it happen twice this semester. Two students that were outed to the class. Luckily, both times they were smaller classes, and both students were sort of at the place where they were like, I was going to come out, but I just wasn't quite ready yet, and not to the place of like, I can't believe I'm out now, right? So as far as camera on policies, I'll also say it's not just about exposing gender or sexual identity based on what's hanging on the wall. It's also, drawing attention to socioeconomic inequalities, to the different ways that people are experiencing this pandemic and the multiplicity of things that we have happening right now around police brutality, this election, policies that are being passed that are anti-LGBTQ+. All of those things are sort of happening and people are then coming on camera to perform. And right, when we were in person, you could sort of get lost in the crowd. You could sit in the back of the class when you weren't feeling it. You could still participate and be present. But now you have to have your camera on and it feels very much like a spotlight. And that can be really intense for folks struggling with anxiety around a lot of other issues happening. And that's not just LGBTQ plus students, right? That's all of our students. So there's a lot about camera on policies to think about. But that's what I invite you to do as you're planning the next semester. Think about your policies and think about why you feel that you need to have a camera on policy. What is it that you're trying to capture? What is it that you're setting, you're setting up an environment for your classroom. So what does the camera on policy contribute to that environment? Mm-hmm. And is it necessary? And a lot of this can also be returning the power of the way that students show up back to them, right? So saying, I want you to be in control and in power of the way that you show up and the way that you participate in your education. And allowing students to decide when and how that feels good to them. So a lot of that can be a conscious conversation that you have with your classes. Mm-hmm. And if you do decide that you need to have a camera on policy for whatever reason, I would only suggest that you make that why you want the camera on policy to be in place and when. Because I know some faculty are like, I'm fine if when we're in lecture they have their camera off, but when we go to like breakout groups, I want you to have your camera on, right, to talk to your peers. So explain the difference. If you have a different policy, explain the policy, why and when, and then give students a chance to think about it and know about it, and say, you know, for the first class, we're not going to have the policy, but I'm going to start next week.
Mhm.
So think about what's behind you and what you do or don't want your peers to know about you based on what's on your walls, right? Or if you have a reason, specific reason that you can't have your camera on, please feel free to come talk to me, because I want to have that conversation with you. And maybe it is because of their home environment. Maybe they don't have a place to, like, you know, maybe they're taking classes in bed and they don't feel comfortable letting the whole world see the back of their bed, right? And so that can be very invasive also. So for some folks, if you think about it, letting my peers see where I sleep can be a very invasive and exposing moment. So having that conversation with students that still struggle with it and explaining the why, and what type of an environment you're trying to create in the classroom. I think a lot of times, if you have those kind of conversations and dialogue, that goes a lot further than saying, I want your camera on, and that's that.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, I would also invite you to spell that out in your syllabus. I know not, there's always a problem with students not reading the syllabus in its entirety. But, you know, if you can say that on the first day of class, like, I have a camera on policy, and here's what it is. It's spelled out in the syllabus. I'm holding you accountable for it. Here's why I have it.
Thank you so much. Really, really great thoughts.
Thanks.